If I were to ask you what your favorite jutsu was, 9 times out of 10 the answer is gonna be some sort of ninjutsu. It's the largest category of jutsu among the 3 basic jutsu types, and when looking at almost all ninja confrontations, they more often than not feature at least one or more ninjutsu. Whether it be Kakashi vs Zabuzu, Hashirama vs Madara, or Madara vs the 5 Kage, these fights make heavy use of ninjutsu, but there is one person who stands out as having a nigh unstoppable ninjutsu arsenal, that being Minato Namikaze. Minato, since his early conception, was described as a peerless, one-of-a-kind shinobi with a particular talent for jutsu, so with that in mind, what I want to do today is take a deep dive into Minato's kit to see just that. But before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, we're shooting for 10k. Now, when speaking about Minato's ninjutsu, there's no better place to start than his claim to fame, his flying rising. Now, I specifically said his flying rising because his is a bit different to Tobirama and Boruto's in certain aspects. On a base level, all of them function the same, however Minato's is a lot more versatile, which I'll get into in a bit, but first I want to talk about how the flying rising works on its own. The flying rising is a legendary space-time ninjutsu that allows Minato to freely pass through the boundaries of space and time, giving him the ability to instantaneously move to anywhere that is marked by a signature jutsu formula. It's frequently referenced as a type of teleportation similar to the body flicker, however it's more akin to the summoning jutsu as it works by transporting whatever is being moved by the jutsu into a subspace before exiting them out at the desired location. This on its own isn't that overpowered as it's literally just the summoning jutsu, however Minato's application of the jutsu turns it into one of the most devastating combat abilities in the series. Minato is able to mark anywhere with his FTG seals, and when it comes in contact with an enemy, it becomes a cursed seal of death. And this is because not only do the marks never disappear, no matter where you are or how far away you get, Minato can teleport his attacks directly onto you and strike you down instantly. This is genuinely terrifying, since even if you were to escape an encounter with Minato, if he so much as touches you, your life gets put on a timer and you become a permanent fast travel for Minato. But let me put this into perspective for you. Let's say you get marked by Minato and somehow you make it back to your village, you still become a walk-in liability, since at any point in time, Minato can teleport into the middle of your village while everyone is asleep and take them all out. This is the exact reason why Minato has a run on sight order, as even if you win or escape an encounter with Minato, no you didn't. The biggest example of this is with Obito, where even after dying and reviving, Minato's mark on Obito never disappeared and he was able to teleport a slash through Obito's torso before he could even react. Minato's main form of combat, however, is the use of his special marked kunai that he scatters around the battlefield so he can teleport around and attack from any angle. In the Third Great Shinobi War, during the Battle of Kanabi Bridge, the Leaf's forces were dwindled to 4 shinobi, going up against at least 50 shinobi on the stone side. Minato arrives on the scene and only gives them one order: to direct his kunai at the enemy and he'll take care of the rest. This is largely misinterpreted as him telling them to scatter them for him, but there's nothing to suggest that. After getting the order, the only thing we see them do is line up the kunai on the floor before getting ready to watch the yellow flash in action. We don't get to see the actual fight go down, but a couple chapters later, Minato rescues Kakashi from a group of stone shinobi, and when asked about the enemy, Minato says he dealt with all of them. Minato is obviously alive here, which means that not only did he take out all of those 50 shinobi, he handled it so fast he could teleport just in time and take down the rest that were attacking Kakashi. Now, the flying rising really doesn't have any speed scaling, as it's literally just instantaneous teleportation and would solely rely on Minato's reaction speed, but just to establish a floor for how fast he can use it while not mental nerfed, in the fight against Jubidara, Minato was able to teleport in between Madara's TSOs and Guy on his last step of the Sekizo, which is the fastest step, then catch Madara's truth-seeking orb and teleport all the way to the Leaf Village before the orbs could pass through his cloak and before Might Guy could touch him. This is the single greatest reaction speed feat by any non-Six Paths tier character, which means that he's simply not getting touched by anybody below that level. Minato is also not restricted to just his kunai and marking, since it's stated by Minato himself that all he needs is for his chakra to be connected to something for him to teleport. This is the same principle that he and Naruto used in the war to teleport the Alliance away from Chubito, which to be honest is kind of redundant outside of these niche applications, but knowing Minato, he'd find some way to make it viable. Similarly, only the size of whatever is being teleported away affects the amount of chakra it takes to teleport it, but seeing as though Minato was able to teleport away the 10 tails Bijou bomb that's significantly bigger than the 8 tails, Minato should have no problem teleporting anybody within the series. Now, going back to what I said about Minato's flying Raijin applications being different to Tobirama and Boruto's, just like the ability to teleport anything that is connected to his chakra, barring Boruto, Minato was able to combine the flying Raijin with his barrier techniques, creating the flying Raijin guiding thunder. With this application of the flying Raijin, he can create a crack in space-time that is capable of instantly absorbing a full power tail beast bomb from the 9 tails and instantly teleport it to a marked location. We aren't given a specific size restriction for the jutsu, but in theory, Minato should be able to create a miniature version that he can use to redirect oncoming attacks back onto his opponents. However, this is just my headcanon, there really is no evidence for it. Even in Boruto, we get this chart comparing Boruto's flying Raijin to Minato's, and Minato's is just better in every single category, whether it's long distance, short distance, across dimensions, and even with the requirements for teleportation, Minato is just superior. I do also want to mention Minato's body flicker here, since it makes more sense in this section of the video, and they both function as a part of Minato's teleportation. The body flicker is a D-rank ninjutsu that uses chakra to move short distances at incredible speeds, making it appear as if the user has suddenly vanished and is so fast that people often mistake it for teleportation. Although the jutsu is primarily used for transportation, there are only 2 shinobi who are fast enough with it to use it as a viable means of combat. The first one is the 4th Kage, the fastest man on the planet at the time, and the guy who he directly admits inferiority to, Minato Namikaze. As a matter of fact, Minato's main fighting style outside of using flying Raijin is to one-shot his opponent right off the bat using his body flicker. Killer B, after seeing Naruto use his body flicker to blitz Kisame, directly compares it to Minato, saying first at bat, quite a smash just like the yellow flash. And this obviously implies that Minato fights in this exact same way. Minato's body flicker is also the fastest among all non-6 pass tier characters, since he reached the battlefield with his body flicker before the other Hokages, including Hashirama, and is stated by Tobirama to have a better body flicker than his. A lot of people incorrectly interpret this moment as Tobirama saying that Minato's flying Raijin is better, but this makes no sense for 2 different reasons. For one, the Viz translation has Tobirama saying teleportation, but the actual kanji there is Shunshin, which is body flicker, as opposed to Hiraishin, which is the flying Raijin. It also cannot be in reference to flying Raijin, since neither Minato nor Tobirama had FTG seals on the battlefield before they arrived. This panel often gets misinterpreted as Minato teleporting to the battlefield using his kunai. However, this interpretation makes no sense because Minato would have had to have arrived beforehand, since he teleports the 10 tails Bijou bomb before landing in front of Naruto and Sakura. We also see that the kunai gets thrown and lodged into the ground right before Minato lands, so unless you believe that Minato stood on top of the Hokage stone faces and threw his kunai across half the land of fire and 2 other countries, then he simply used the body flicker. He also uses his teleportation in conjunction with one of the most powerful techniques within the series, his own personal creation, the Rasengan. The Rasengan is a spiraling ball of chakra that is compressed and spun at high speeds to increase the potency and damage done on impact. This is Minato's own original jutsu that took him around a day to create and the next 3 years to perfect. There is this misconception that Minato took 3 years to create it, but this is never stated, as Jiraiya specifically says perfect, and the Minato one-shot confirms this. After an almost fatal encounter with the 4 and 5 tails Jinchuriki, Minato got his first real look at the tail beast bomb and decided to make a jutsu modeled after it for Kushina. He then spends the rest of the day developing the jutsu before getting some advice from Jiraiya, whose inspiration allowed him to create the very first Rasengan right then and there. This all happened on the exact same day, and we know this based on the order of events. When Minato first went to meet up with Kushina at the beginning of the one-shot, Kushina tried to get him to train with her, but Minato refused, saying he wanted to practice a different jutsu elsewhere that day, at specifically Training Ground 3. Kushina gets angry at this and starts yelling at Minato, which is important, but most importantly, the other members of Team Jiraiya tell Minato that they need to report the mission, which means that this encounter happened on the same day of the Bijou incident. Now, after Kushina gets taken back into the Uzumaki barrier, she sneaks out and goes to Training Ground 3 after Minato created the Rasengan, where she apologized to him for yelling at him earlier. This had to have happened later that day, as it would make no sense for Kushina to apologize for something that she deemed happened earlier if this conversation happened, let's say, a day after or even 3 years later. Minato simply saw the Bijou bomb, went home, and then created the Rasengan that same day. But what makes this entire thing more impressive is the fact that not even a couple minutes later, Minato used his newly created A-rank jutsu for the first time to clash with the full Ninetales Bijou bomb. This is a feat beyond anything 90% of the verse could even dream to accomplish, and though it obviously doesn't scale a 14-year-old Minato to a full Ninetales, seeing as though the bomb wasn't fully formed yet and the Ninetales was being suppressed, even then no one below 6 pass level is taking that attack to the face, at least in their base form. But to really put it into perspective just how strong Minato's Rasengan is, it took Naruto multiple rounds of Sage Mode amped Odama Rasengans and Rasen Shurikens to hold back only half the Ninetales, and that's with a fully grown Kushina's chain suppressing it as well. Minato, on the other hand, beat the full Ninetales in a chakra clash while fatigued, with a hole in his chest, poisoned, and with the help of a much weaker Kushina's chain, since the chains get stronger as you age and Kushina is 14 during the one-shot. And based on what Killer B said, being in the mental plane of someone else significantly nerfs you, which means that Minato is also just intrinsically nerfed going into the encounter. People also like to downplay Minato's Rasengan by pointing out that it didn't kill Obito. However, Obito's body was fitted with so much Hashirama cells that his non-crushed arms were made of Hashirama cells as well. So it could just be the case that Obito simply healed through the attack. You could also argue that Minato wasn't even trying to kill him in the first place and was holding back, seeing as though he immediately marked him with an FTG seal in the exact same spot after landing his Rasengan. There would be no reason to put an FTG seal on someone you're in the process of killing, as they would be dead, which means that Minato more than likely held back so he could keep him alive for intel and mark him so he could track him if he escaped. He should also be massively fatigued at this time because of reasons I'm gonna touch on later, and also because he has been using the Flying Rising repeatedly to save Kushina and teleport away the Ninetales Bijou bomb, which he stated himself takes a lot of chakra. Minato is also a prodigy at Fuinjutsu, or the art of seals, and has deep ties to the Uzumaki outside of just his marriage with Kushina. The Uzumaki are known for their advanced sealing jutsu, to the point of being hunted to damn near extinction because of it. So when Kushina is talking to Minato about how he's picking up new Uzumaki sealing jutsu practically every time they meet, it sort of puts into perspective the level of aptitude he has for the craft. After Kushina went berserk and underwent her V2 transformation, Minato went straight to work augmenting the pre-existing tetragram seal in his style to restrain the Ninetales, who just from one look stated that Minato was a most powerful shinobi, ranking alongside the first Hokage. This is all while having a 7-tailed Kushina's hand through his chest and dealing with the side effects of the Ninetales poison-like chakra, which puts into perspective just how impressive this is. Minato, while fatigued from training, reeling from chakra poisoning, and with an arm through his chest, was able to reseal the full Ninetales at the age of 14, albeit with the help of Kushina, which we know happened because Minato survived the encounter, and the alternative would have been his death. And this isn't even a one-off thing. During Kushina's labor, Minato was there constantly pouring in his chakra to maintain Kushina's seal and held back the Ninetales while Naruto was being delivered. Labor can average around 8 to 10 hours, so even at the lowest level, Minato would be suppressing the entire Ninetales for a third of the day. But what does this mean offensively? The most popular of Minato's sealing jutsu is the Reaper Death Seal, which he used to seal away half of the Ninetales. The Reaper Death Seal is an extreme sealing technique developed by the Uzumaki that seals the soul of the target with the user's life as a sacrifice. When invoked, it summons an invisible god of death clad in white that erects an invisible barrier strong enough to contain the Ninetales. When activated, curse marks appear on the arms of the Shinigami that pierces the body of the jutsu user and pulls out the target's soul. This is obviously a kamikaze attack as it takes out both Minato and the target. However, in a life or death situation, having this in your back pocket gives you an automatic GG's. The same however can be said for his most underrated seal, the 8 sign seal. This is the seal that Minato used to seal the latter half of the Nine Tails into Naruto while on his deathbed with a Nine Tails claw running through his torso. The 8 sign seal is the result of layering 2 4 sign seals on top of each other and is mainly used when a giant enemy or evil spirit needs to be sealed. The jutsu essentially gives you the same level of lethality as the Reaper Death seal without the drawbacks, as with just a touch you can seal practically anybody into anything of your choice. People like to make the argument that you can only seal away chakra, however this is never stated. The only thing that is stated is that it's mainly used to seal giant enemies, which doesn't restrict it to only chakra based things, and if it can seal large objects then logically can seal small objects like a person. This means that at any point in time Minato can simply touch you and seal you into a random object like a rock, a kunai, another person, or even himself. The difference between this seal and the Reaper Death seal though is that the Reaper Death seal can divide chakra, which is why he used it instead of just using the 8 sign seal. He also has a contract seal mark that when placed on a target removes whatever standing summoning contracts they have. Minato uses this on Obito and separates his connection to the Nine Tails, so if he let's say fought Jiraiya with just a touch, he can remove Jiraiya's ability to summon Ma and Pa. But speaking of summoning, I figured I'd add it here since it kinda falls under the seals and I forgot to add it to the teleportation section. Since the beginning of the series, Minato has been shown to have some relation to Mount Miyaboku, as in the first chapter we see the image of the 4th Hokage riding on top of a frog. This later gets confirmed in chapter 96 where we get a look at the Toad summoning scroll and Minato's right there as the 4th Hokage. We also see Minato summoning Gamma Bunta during the Nine Tails attack and summon Gamamaro to store the spell key for Naruto's seal. It's pretty obvious he has deep connections to Mount Miyaboku and summon Toads at will, which means that he can also summon Ma and Pa just like Jiraiya to offset his shortcomings with Sage Mode, as well as perform other jutsu like the Toad Confrontation chant. Now I was gonna do a KCM section, but my boy Virtue has an amazing video on it where he goes over anything that I would have covered here, so if you want to see that part, go check out his video. And yes, this is me being lazy again, but hey, this video is like 16 minutes long and I don't feel like editing a 20-minute video today. But either way, that's the end of this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye B.